Hey guys, Sean Klinger, semi-retired motorcycle journalist, and this is a test of the MX Tech T7 Complete Fork Rally Spec and MX Tech National T7 Rally Spec shock. You can buy the MX Tech fork and the shock separately, but if you bought them together, it's going to cost you roughly $7,640. That's something to keep in mind. I'll get to pricing. It'll surprise you actually, I think, to kind of put that in perspective, how this bike performs and how it fits into other motorcycles. Don't let it necessarily deter you from watching the rest of this video. The other point I want to make is that this Tenere 700, at least to me, is a true unicorn bike. By unicorn, I mean the do-it-all machine. By far, this is the best adventure bike I've ever ridden. It's also an amazing dual sport bike. It's also an extremely large motocross bike and an extremely large off-road bike. I'm going to explain all of that in this video, what you get if you're going to purchase this. Number one, again, you can buy the fork kit by itself. It is $4,998. If you want to buy the shock, that's going to come in at $2,640. These both come in it's the same wheel travel as stock, or it comes in a rally spec. The rally spec for the fork is going to add 50 millimeters of travel up there. The rally spec for the shock is going to add 12 millimeters of wheel travel. So why did I put this on the Tenere 700? Essentially, I did kind of a moderate build of this bike previously. Racetech took the stock suspension, stiffened it up a little bit more performance, put in gold valves, stiffened up the spring rate for my weight. I am 195 pounds, but I also wanted to race it at some sprint enduros, the District 37 here in Southern California, which is high-speed off-road desert style racing. The 43 millimeter stock KYB fork is really good for just your casual adventure bike riding, but I had to make the decision of what to do next because I had a blast racing it. I also raced the Biltwell 100. I want to continue to ride this bike hard because it has so much potential, and that's where this kit comes into play. A little bit about MX Tech. MX Tech suspension, they make complete suspension packages for dirt bikes. If you know motocross or supercross at all, some of the privateers, some of the B-level teams run their Blackjack fork or their Raven fork, the National Shock. These are 100% performance-based, A-kit level, like factory level suspension for dirt bikes. MX Tech makes suspension from scratch, from the ground up here in the United States. I just think that's really cool that they have this suspension, and the attention to detail and the fit and finish is impeccable. It's off the chart. You got Kashima coating on the fork, you got the DLC coating on the lowers, you got CNC'd caps with a 4 millimeter Allen. You can bleed the forks, you can adjust the compression up top, you can adjust the rebound on the bottom. This is a closed cartridge system. It is a 49 millimeter fork. So going from a 43 millimeter fork stock to the 49 millimeters fork, much beefier. You get titanium hardware. All the bolts, all the fasteners are titanium. And it also comes with the X-Trig triple clamps specifically designed for the Tenere 700. So that is a huge upgrade right there. Just alone, X-Trig are some of the best triple clamps that are made for dirt bikes and off-road riding. For this bike, it is a game changer. It is absolutely amazing. The shock is also beefed up. It is a 46 millimeter piston body, and you also have a 18 millimeter shaft. It still has the external preload adjuster, hydraulic preload adjuster, and that works amazing to dial in your sag. Another thing about the shock that's pretty cool, typical shocks, you got high speed and low speed compression and rebound. The National Shock actually has high speed, mid-speed and low-speed compression adjustment, so you can truly dial in exactly the feel, exactly what you want for your specific riding conditions and your riding style.
What's up? You like adventure riding and adventure content? You must, because you're watching this video. You're also going to love Fox Racing's new line of adventure apparel, including their all-new Stealth Bomber Pro gloves I'm wearing right now. These puppies feature ulna and wrist super fabric sliders, DWR treated goatskin leather palm, smartphone compatible fingertips, Polartec wind block back of hand to give you a little comfort in the early chilly mornings, a D30 knuckle protection, knit ribbed cuff for really cool comfort, and this awesome closure system. Check them out today, foxracing.com. Stay tuned for more adventure content here.
Let's get into installation real quick. If you do bike maintenance and work on bikes just kind of at a casual level, and you have normal motorcycle tools, pretty sure you'll be able to do this by yourself. I was able to do it at home with the tools. There's no special tools needed, no cutting, no welding, no electrical. It's pretty much a bolt up. The most tricky part is because you're swapping out triple clamps on a bike, essentially a street bike, you know, it's an adventure bike. It's not designed for the triple clamps to be removed. They're relatively simple to remove, but the ignition assembly where you put the key in to start the bike, that is in the top triple clamp of the stock bike. Just because Yamaha doesn't want that part of the bike to be removed so the bike doesn't get stolen, you have to use an angle grinder or a drill and drill out those bolts that hold it together. And then once you get that, there's new bolts to put that key assembly back in the extra triple clamp. So that's kind of the trickiest part. They use KTM fork guards. That comes with the kit. If you're running the dual disc, which I am, you will have to figure out a way to put the brake line on the right side of the fork if you're sitting on the bike, the right fork, because that doesn't have any fasteners. So I just put some slits in there and put some zip ties, and it's actually a pretty clean look. Installation of the shock could not be simpler. Honestly, on the Tenere 700, you don't even have to remove the rear wheel. Just seat off some plastics, remove the top bolt, the bottom bolt, take out the stock shock. This does come with some spacers for the linkage. So you take off the linkage, you put those spacers in, cut those back together exactly the same. Hopping on this bike. I am not a tall guy. I am 5'9" on my good days. And I also have the rally seat from Yamaha, which raises up the seat height a little bit. And that's not because I want it to be taller. That's because the ergos are more dirt bikey and more off-road oriented when you have the taller seat. Putting on the suspension makes the bike even taller. If you are very concerned about touching the ground, if you're very concerned about dabbing and paddling through off-road stuff, this is something to consider. Essentially, the way I ride, I'm in Southern California, I ride fast desert, faster trails. I'm not trying to do, I did do some technical riding. That's not my main area of riding, is technical. So it's not that much of a concern for the amount of performance you get out of this. I'd rather have a taller bike, and I would have to make the adjustment rather than a bike that is kind of making a compromise just so I can touch at red lights or at stop signs. The other thing I noticed right away is the balance of the bike. So in stock form, this bike feels a little choppered out, even with the proper sag. Just feels like the rear end is kind of low, feels like the front end of the bike is high, and it's just unbalanced. The recommendation is to run the forks about 10 millimeters up in the triple clamps, and that really balances out the bike, and it really improves the handling. I didn't realize how much having a more balanced bike was going to improve the handling of this machine. It turns so much better. It's way easier to initiate turns, to change direction on the trail. It really helps the handling, and that's something that I'm very surprised at, because I was just focused on, you know, suspension as far as like being stiffer or softer, but it really helps with the handling as well. Something that I didn't mention at the beginning, why you see another name, another company on the fork legs here. So MX Tech makes the suspension. There's another company called EnduroSpec out of Colorado. They are suspension tuners. They also are a distributor of the MX Tech products. They have a lot of knowledge on actually the Tenere 700 and off-road bikes in general. So how they worked out this program for this bike was MX Tech sent the fork and shock to EnduroSpec. They're the ones that tuned it up, built it up for this build. At the motocross track, I dialed in my initial settings with the fork. I loved it right off the bat. It is night and day, a million times better than the stock fork. It was something that was just a major limiting factor. I had to slow down so much when I was trying to race and trying to push that fork hard, and bottoming it was terrifying. The major thing about this fork is that it is like factory level A-kit suspension. It is super plush, super smooth. There's no harshness, which in the past I've tested some A-kit stuff on dirt bikes, and sometimes it's just too harsh, it's too stiff, and if you're not a supercross level rider, if you're not a pro level rider, you're not gonna get the most out of it. I am not that level of rider. This fork has so much comfort that I was blown away by the comfort and the hold up, because those are really two opposing factors. Those are things that are very hard to get right. Have something that I can slam really hard into whoops, into square edge, and this fork absorbs it, and it is controlled. There is smooth action through the stroke and way more hold up with this much more rigid triple clamp, these much more rigid forks. As far as twisting and flexing, there is no twisting and flexing. This front end is now so precise. It is so predictable. It does exactly the same thing every time you hit something, and that improves your confidence. It improves your riding. You can ride faster. You know exactly what's going to happen, and it's a major benefit, not just for motocross track or off-road riding, but even adventure bike riding with this thing loaded up with lots of gear. Moving on to the shock, like I said, there are some cons. When I first was riding this bike and testing it, overall there was a much firmer feel than stock, but when I did push it to its limit, the bottoming resistance was pretty soft. In the stock shock has a unique feel that most of the stroke I blow through very easily, like 80% of it is too soft. But then the last 20%, when you reach the bottom of that stroke, it actually has kind of a softer bottoming. It doesn't clank metal to metal. It does stop at some point. Obviously, you run out of suspension travel, but it is a softer landing, I guess. With the National Shock, what I noticed was a majority of the stroke is actually firmer and more controlled, and I was able to stay higher in the stroke and have more control and more precision out of the shock. There was a certain point where essentially using up 80% of that shock, the last 20% I blew through really fast. And then it also had a very hard metal on metal clank. In my initial test of this shock, when I did another sprint enduro with this whole setup, the fork was amazing. The front end of the bike was amazing. I couldn't be happier there. The limiting factor then became the shock, and I had to slow down a little bit, and I just didn't want to clank metal on metal and really slam the rear end. So I sent the shock back to MX Tech. You know, I called them, we talked about it. They said, absolutely no problem. We will stiffen it up and make it a much firmer setting for your racing. So getting back, round number 2 of the shock, I took it out to Ocotillo Wells, a place I know well, a place I really love to ride this bike fast through very wide open, whooped out terrain. Number 1, setting the sag, I set it a little too high, and the rebound was set up a little bit too fast. So firmer shock, I was kind of getting a little nose down, rear end high kicking off the bumps. So I slowed down the rebound. I also, even in this stiffer setting, I went in 5 clicks stiffer on the low speed compression. I added a little bit more sag so that it lowered the bike in the rear to balance it out. And this setting is money. Now I still am able to bottom the shock, but I mean, you could bottom any suspension if you throw a bike out of a plane. It's not that the goal is to have it never bottom, because this is a 450-pound machine. I am riding it how it's not intended to be ridden. It's not about not bottoming, it's about the control. It's about how often you're bottoming it. And now with this setup, I know exactly what the rear end's gonna do. I know exactly what the front end's gonna do. I rode it in some technical terrain, some off-road, some rocky, jeepy stuff. I didn't lose any comfort. I'm not losing any comfort whatsoever. That is a major benefit of this suspension as well. Not to use corporate jargon, but something that is my final thought on this particular build, it's synergy. What that means is overall greater than the sum of the parts. That's what this suspension does. You get much better performing forks, you get better performing shock, but put together, you also get a better handling bike. You get more predictability, you get more confidence, you can ride better, you can ride faster, there's more safety. You can load this thing up. If you're truly one of the long haul adventure bike guys that has the cases and the top case, and you're adding tons of gear to your bike, this kit is still an excellent choice for you to be able to push that bike and ride it hard. So thanks for watching. I know it's a long video, so you made it to the end. If you want to see more videos, check out the Cycle News YouTube channel here. Plenty more videos on everything motorcycle related. Thanks for watching. See you next time.